Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, welcome. I'm so glad to have you join the fam. So my name is Iswat and I am a Christian content creator. So I create content around education, faith, beauty and lifestyle. Please click on the subscribe button, subscribe to my channel, and also just hit the notification bell so you can be instantly notified when I have a new video up and running. Alright guys, so let's just jump into today's video. Alright, so today's video I'm going to be covering part 2 of Come and Abuse God's Way series. Okay, so part 2 is going to be talking about the effect the abuse had on me. So in part 1 I had spoken about how I shared my abuse experience with you guys, and you haven't watched part 1, I'm going to put a link. Part 1 I had just shared with you guys my abuse experience, just what that was like. So in part 2 I'm going to be talking about the effect that the abuse had on me. Alright guys, so I divided this part 2 into kind of like different areas that the abuse had on me. The first being what the effect that the abuse had on me mentally, the second being physically, and the last being spiritually. So let's start with mentally. I had kind of given you all like a sneak peek of what happened to me after the abuse. So yeah, I had mentioned in the previous video that it had broken me, literally broken me. I mean, I was 4 years old, but I knew that something was wrong. It kind of broke something in me. I didn't really understand what happened. I knew, like I had shared, I knew that something was wrong. What this person did to me wasn't right, you know. So the first thing that happened to me was I became a very timid child to the abuse, and very bubbly and very lively, very playful. I would literally talk to anyone. I don't think I was afraid to speak to people, even strangers. And the first thing that happened was I just shrunk back and I became very timid. I became very shy, very afraid of people, and a lot of people noticed it. And you know, because I was such a lively child, and a lot of people noticed this, and you know, they would ask me, is it not the same Issa that we used to play with? You know how Africans be like, oh, I was at your first birthday, do you remember me? But like people would ask me like, oh, do you remember when you came to my house and you said this to me, or you did this and you did that, like why are you so shy now, and this and that. And of course I couldn't start explaining to people that this is what has made me shy. But that was the first thing that happened to me. I became very timid. The second thing that happened to me was I became very depressed. I started struggling with depression at a very young age. Of course, at the time I didn't know it was depression. I just thought maybe something was wrong, or you know. But I mean, now that I'm older, in hindsight, I know that it was depression. So I started struggling with depression. I was very unstable emotionally. Like very little and flimsy things would make me cry. Even like growing up as a teenager as well, little things would make me cry, like somebody yelling at me or something like that. Because the kind of father that I grew up with, he's not the type who can endorse such behaviors. So I mean, he would see me crying and you know, just you know, being frightened by little things, and he's like, what's wrong with you, this and that and this, and like he didn't understand that it was linked back to what had happened to me as a child. So I became very timid and very emotionally unstable as well. I would say third thing was I really struggled with my self-image, how I saw myself. It was just one act, or would I say 2 acts, but it really did do a lot of damage in me. I just saw myself as worthless. I didn't really think much could come out of my life. I really also struggled with accepting and giving love, and it's really just taken the grace of God. Until today, it's really hard for me to take a compliment from people. You know, I just really struggle with receiving love from people. And so let's say it's unfortunate. It's not unfortunate because I mean, kind of siblings I have, my sister, my older sister, even though my sister, I know she's crazy, you know, and she would just stare at me and she'd be like, do you know that you're fine? And I'm just looking at her like, okay. You know, I really struggle with receiving love, also just like sharing love. But God has been helping me. God has really been helping me. So yeah, those are the, I would say, top 3 things I struggled with mentally after the abuse. Struggled with my self-image, how I saw myself. Also struggled with depression. Also struggled with just being unstable emotionally. And the last being becoming very timid. I would say that the enemy used that to kind of steal my voice. Those are the things that I struggled with mentally. Alright, so let's move on to physically, what happened to me physically after the abuse. So I would say the first thing happened to me after the abuse was, I mean, like anyone who has been abused, obviously I became sexually let me not use the word active, let me say awakened, became sexually awakened at a very young age, because you can't just would I say mess around with a child and think it's gonna end there. It doesn't just end there. You know, you've kind of awakened things that are supposed to be asleep till, you know, the child gets married. Yeah, so that was the first thing that happened to me. I became very sexually awakened, and my natural response was to say gravitate away from the sex that abused me. Yeah, that was my natural, well, that's the natural response, to gravitate away from the sex that abused me. So I started, would I say, I started leaning towards women. Yeah, I actually started leaning towards women, and for a couple of years I was a lesbian as a child. Of course, at the time I didn't understand exactly what was happening, because like I said, it was a natural response to what had happened. So I was a lesbian for a couple of years as a child. God actually delivered me at 10. Interestingly, honestly guys, God is such a perfect father, and he always comes through in time. God delivered me when I was 10 years old, just before I was about to start high school at an only girls school. Guys, like, look at the timing of God. So that was the number one thing that happened to me physically. I, you know, became sexually awakened and naturally leaned towards the opposite sex or that abused me, which is women. Spiritually, honestly, I wouldn't say that I was so much affected spiritually, because I was a child. I didn't know so much about God. In the first instance, I struggled with a lot of shame. Like, even when I became born again at 16, I struggled with a lot of shame. I didn't want anyone to know. It was just, it's, you know, God, I don't really want anyone to tell the story. Even if you're going to use me, God, like, let's just keep this thing between the both of us. And God is like, no darling, we ain't having that. You're going to tell your story because it's a story of victory. I struggled with a lot of shame, just regrets. Like, I never wanted anyone to find out I had been abused or I had been a lesbian for a couple of years. These are things that, you know, it wasn't even my fault, but like, I still had so much shame. So I would say spiritually, number one was shame. I struggled with a lot of shame. Another thing that I struggled with physically was, or I think I still struggle with physically, which can still fall under accepting and receiving love, is just the idea of being with, and guys, I'm being very vulnerable here. The idea of, because I really want to share, like, I really want you guys to be aware of what actually happens when someone is abused. You know, even like years, because this happened to me, I was 4 years old. I'm 22 today, guys, and like, I'm still dealing with, dealing with side effects or effects of the abuse. But the Lord is helping me. God has been so amazing. He's been so amazing in my healing journey. So yeah, I still struggled with receiving and accepting love, and even like love when it comes to like sex. Like, it really is a struggle for me, and I don't know how to put this in words, but I just struggle with the idea of being that vulnerable with someone again. And you know, it's something that I'm still talking to, like, I'm still processing with God, still talking to the Lord, because I'm guessing because I was a child and because I was vulnerable, and that led to that. I really struggle with the idea of being vulnerable with someone when having sex. Does that make any sense? Yeah, so that's another thing that I struggled with physically. You know, the Lord has helped me, the Lord has healed me, the Lord has helped me thus far. So yeah, guys, those are the top effects that the abuse had on me. The first being mentally, the second being physically, just struggling with being sexually active, awakened at a young age, and also being active at a young age, and also spiritually, just struggling with shame, mentally struggling with self-image, struggling with timidity, struggling with depression, and just emotional imbalance. Thank you so much for watching my video, guys. Please subscribe, like, and comment. Please connect with me on my social media handles: Iswa_OL on Instagram, Tara_OL on Snapchat, and Iswa Oladele on Facebook. If you shared a similar experience like this, please feel free to reach out to me. If you want to talk, feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to speak with you. Alright guys, I will see you in my next video. Bye. The first being the effect had on me mentally, the second being the effects, the first being